Welcome back to The Creative Lens. Today, Jake and Colden break down the newly announced Sony FX5 and discuss whether we may finally be in the camera endgame. They compare it to the Nikon ZR, Canon C50, and they celebrate Gerald Undun's return to camera testing, even if it's just for this FX5. They break down the camera firmware era that we seem to be living in, where some of the newest features of this camera won't be available until next year. Plus, an incredible iPhone short film proves that great stories still matter way more than expensive gear. Let's get into it.
Boys and girls, here it is, the Sony FX5, the camera that we have all been waiting for.
Another one.
This is the new Sony FX5.
Another one.
To be the first people to make the launch films for the FX5.
Another one.
This is Sony's FX5.
And another one. This is the Sony FX5, and I've not been this excited about a camera since the A7S III launch way back in 2020.
Yo, what's up? Welcome to The Creative Lens. I apologize to do this, Jake. We're talking about the FX5, so we are
Another one!
And another one! We're just another one. But I feel like, how do you not talk about this new camera that just got dropped yesterday? So thank you guys for hanging out and joining us. If you just joined us, you missed my absurd mockery of all of us creators that are talking about the FX5. But it is honestly one of the most exciting cameras that I've seen come out. We've covered a lot of them here on the channel. We were live for it yesterday. And it is just, it's an interesting camera. So it's got huge step forwards for Sony, right? But I've seen, I don't know about you guys, Jake, I don't know what you've seen. I've seen all the memes from the Panasonic fans, from the Canon fans that are like, bro, we had this. We've had this. What do you're excited about 5K? What's going open gate? Oh, cool. I'm a Panasonic. I've shot with that for 8 years. So it's, you know, I'm excited as a Sony shooter. This is a really sick camera, but we're going to, here's our spin on it. I think if you want a deep dive on all the specs, I love the specs. I've already dug through, you know, every one of those creators I played for the intro, Jake, I've watched every one of those. But I think we've got a little bit of a different spin on it, just kind of what this camera is really good for, and where it stacks up onto some of these other cameras as professional creators that, you know, are using these tools in a working environment that's maybe not the cinema level where the Burano would sit, right?
Yeah, that was it was an interesting thing because I was diving into it this morning, and I got to see that Claudio Miranda and Gareth Edwards both did tests on it. Like,
yo, you just got yourself muted. What happened, man? Did you hit your button?
Test? No.
Can everybody else hear Jake? Because I can't hear you, Jake.
Check.
Nope, I lost you, man. No, well, this is what happens. I don't know. Wait, maybe it's mine. Maybe it's me, man.
Check. Can you hear me?
I'm
headphones.
Okay. I've got my headphone. Yeah, guys, who can you hear if you're on this chat? We need some support here.
Who's got to cancel out?
You're back. Did you do something or did I do something?
I don't know. All right.
Okay. We're back.
What I was just saying earlier was what I thought was really cool was that I saw a breakdown from Claudio Miranda, who did kind of like a traditional more camera test on it and gave it from like you know, one of the top DPs in the industry right now. But also, you know, because he was using the FX3 and the FX3 sensors a lot between F1 and Maverick, right? And so he's very familiar with that, but also obviously comping it with the Venice and the Burano. And so getting to hear his insight on it and then getting to see Gareth Edwards, who obviously, you know, famously used it on the Creator, the FX3, just to see his video on it. And these cameras are so close now. Like all these cameras are like they're fighting for inches. It is very much kind of like, I feel like the Olympics of cameras now. It's not like, you know, where like back in the day, you know, in sports where it's like, whoa, you really have this great player who's leagues beyond everybody. But like, you know, you get into, you know, top level Olympics now, and you're literally winning races by hundredths of a second. And that is kind of what I found now. It's the Olympics of cameras, where it's like literally these cameras are like, you know, what is our version of hundredths of a second better? It's like, ooh, you have, I mean, you're going to get into it because I know you later, which is sensor readout speeds.
Yep.
You know, like that one detail is not going to make you go to Sony or go to Canon or go to Panasonic or go to Red. Like, and it's these little details like that what the race comes down to. And but it's such a fascinating space we're in right now in terms of cameras.
That's why I called it the camera endgame, because I just feel like we've talked about this a couple of times. Like, even we've covered the GoPros and we've covered, you know, now the FX5 all in a summer. And it's like, they're all so good. You could shoot with any of them. And the stuff we were complaining about even 5 years ago doesn't exist anymore. They're all great cameras. And so it literally just comes down to like, what do you need it for? And to me, so we'll get into sensor readout and some other little specs that have kind of come out since the announcement yesterday. But the two disappointments I had, and we kind of knew it, but we didn't get a global shutter, which would have been cool for Sony. We know Sony can do it. And we didn't get internal NDs, which we know fit in the FX6, but can't fit in that little box. Even though they made it a little bit bigger, you know, they couldn't fit internal NDs, which is at the end of the world. I don't know. Like, you guys tell us, are internal NDs a deal breaker for you? The other thing that kind of ties all this together that I experienced this week for sure is this idea, and it's not just Sony, but the Sony stuff. This was a weird launch for Sony a little bit, because they touted 4K 240 frames a second, right? On our live stream, we were like, oh my God, you can do 4K 240, but it's not coming until next year. So they're giving us a product, like a product pipeline of their firmware updates. As an A7S III owner from the beginning, we were promised firmware updates that we never even really got, and they just kind of brought out the FX3 and then made that better. So that's just, do we trust the firmware? And Todd, I see you on here. You know, you're waiting for the firmware stuff for the Insta360 Luna. So that just kind of is this tie-in. Do you buy the camera now? My argument has always been, you buy the camera for what it is today, right now. Don't trust that any company is going to take care of you a year, 2, 3 years down the line, because their job is to sell new cameras, more cameras. So that's always been my mentality. But I feel like we're in this era of, trust me, bro, it's coming. Here's this kind of beta camera.
But you see it across industries. Like, you see that, like, I mean, I'm not even a gamer, and I know of all of the drama in the gaming space about this, of like, oh, this update's coming, or this, like, and it's, oh, and because I see all the memes on it, and I literally play 0 video games. And like, that's how how crazy that this has gotten across industries in our society. It's just like, oh, we got to get it to market, but we're not ready, but we got to get it to market. And like, and I feel like it's not only in the camera industry, but you also see it in the film, you know, the amount of films that are rushed through to make a deadline. But it's like, if you just got it, you know, had an little extra time with it to make it that much better.
Yeah. I like that you paralleled it with video games, because that was kind of my thought when I was thinking of this week, was the video game market, where it's like, they'll sell you a game that's glitchy as hell, but because everything's plugged in, you know, to the internet, they can push you new updates and fix it after they've already got your money. So it's interesting to me. That's kind of what Sony seemed to do. They've got a lot of things right already, right out of the gate. Beautiful camera. First time we've had 16-bit internal RAW recording. First time we've had RAW recording on a Sony camera that's not, I guess, the Venice and the Burano, but an FX camera has had internal RAW recording. That's huge. 16-bit is usually what you get with like the Red V Raptor and the Alexa and the Burano. And So having that down in a sub $5,000 camera is incredible. But weird things. I was watching Cam Mackey. Do you watch Cam Mackey's stuff?
I don't even know.
You should, because he's such a visual storyteller, and he's not all about. Did I lose your audio again?
No, I'm right here.
Okay, no, you.
I'm just
mouthed
whispering to myself.
Yes. So he does a great job. He's not super technical, but he tells really engaging stories with all of these reviews that he does. And he is a huge anamorphic shooter. So one thing he was pointing out yesterday, which was interesting, is if you are using, so we have 3x2 open gate, amazing. We have anamorphic D-squeeze, amazing, in camera. But if you do that, you lose autofocus. And I get it 3 years ago because there weren't autofocus anamorphic. So you were kind of making a choice. You're going to shoot anamorphic, so you're going to have manual lenses. But now you have a bunch of different companies that are selling anamorphics that have autofocus. So can we have both? Why does it feels a little quirky and a little bit like they've still got stuff to fix. So if you guys haven't seen it, Cam Mackey's channel, go watch that. He does a great breakdown, especially
a lot of creators got breakdowns of these. Sorry to cut in right there, but it was crazy. We were going back and forth at it this morning, but it's cool because it's all like the real filmmakers. I hate saying that, but it's like it's the guys that we go, oh, you're not just a content creator. Like you're somebody who's out there making, and it was just cool to see all of the drops of compared to, because we've done so much on GoPro and Insta360 and DJI, and that's a very different crowd making those versus the FX5 drops.
Well, and I would say Sony did an insane job getting these to not only the filmmakers, not only the guy who did the creator, who made the FX3 what it is.
Edwards, Claudio Miranda.
But they also hit all these little, not little, but YouTube. It is a perfect marriage of where this camera is going to sit between creators and filmmakers. And it kind of serves a little bit of everybody in between, which is amazing. But their hype machine was on point for this one. Everything dropped at the right time.
Yeah. It's a great independent cinema camera.
100%.
If you're making independent films or television series, regardless, and to me, that includes self-distributing it on YouTube, right? Doesn't make it less of a film. It's just changing the distribution platform. And as we know, if you follow the channel at all, YouTube is the #1 watch streaming platform for televisions.
Yep.
Beating out Apple TV, beating out Netflix, beating out every streaming platform. More people watch YouTube on their television sets than any other streaming platform. So
that's still wild to me. I am not the user that does that. So it just blows my mind.
And so that's where it's you have these audiences, self-distributing films and self-distributing television series is essentially what a vlog series is, or what any of these channels are, just independently released television series.
Yep.
So, but I know for me, it put me into a little bit of a tailspin in terms of, do I get the FX5? Do I stay with Canon? Is this worth it? What about Red? The entry level Reds, or I have the Blackmagic 4Ks. Do I need to upgrade that? I was like, what do I do? Do I stay with this camera? Do I leave? And there's so many specs, because it's not just 6K, 5, because everything's now 5K, 6K. I mean, you have a freaking 17K Blackmagic now.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, the amount of Ks don't matter.
Especially if you're delivering to YouTube. If that's your delivery, why do the Ks matter? Todd, I agree with you. There's a little bit of that for the firmware stuff. Do you put this behind a paywall? And you tell me, Todd, which ones you're thinking of. The only time I can remember Sony really doing this, which was wild and dumb, was their optional add-on to put on custom borders on your FX5 or FX3 or FX6. You had to pay kind of a bunch of money, bless you, to put on custom borders. So that was a weird one to me. I know I've got a couple of updates to my A7S III, although I'll say not as many as I would have liked. I would have liked them to keep that in line more with the FX3. The FX3's done mostly. Oh yeah, you're talking about your FS5. That's you got a couple generations there. That's the only problem is the FS5 is like they are 100% kind of phasing that line out. So I get that one. That's, you know, you hope you don't get stuck in that, but look at modernly where how long it's been, almost 6 years. The FX6 is 6 years old. The FX3 is now like 4.5, 5 years old. So if they keep this around that long, then at least we should have support for, let's hope, at least that long, you know? Jake, you've got a breakdown on some stats. Should we go over some of the stats that we've got, some specs?
So again, you know, in my overwhelm on this, I was like, I didn't know. So I had to make this chart, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I spun up this just to kind of go, okay, let's actually just look at this. What makes the most sense? I'm going to zoom in for, you know,
cool. So that helps.
Make it a little easier for everyone to read. So I basically, my thought was to break down, if my mouse wants to work. No, my computer's going slow. Sorry. The new Sony FX5. And I was like, what are the comparable cameras to this?
Right.
And basically found that, you know, you have either the Canon C50 or the Canon C80, depending on if you want to go slightly above, slightly below. The Blackmagic Pixel 6K and the Red Komodo X. So these all kind of fit in that, what would be the competitors, whether it's via price, you know, you have the Komodo coming in around 7,000, the Pixel 6K, which is 3K, C80, which is 550, the C50, which is 3,900, and the FX5, which is, you know, let's say 5K. Yeah. So, you know, all within a reasonable price bracket. What I still lose wild that this Blackmagic just loses so much money on their cameras. Like it's so cheap. So it just baffles me.
But I would also, I mean, I know this makes sense with the Ks like you were talking about, but the Pixel 6K is, I think it might be the oldest sensor you have on your list right now. And it's definitely the slowest. When we were talking about like my disappointment to not have global shutter, that is, as much as I loved that camera when they announced it, and they definitely, that was their like, oh, you want a box camera? Here you go.
Sure.
But they had a lot of things to fix that they did with the 12K, which is the newer sensor. I would have to put the 12K in this category.
In this category?
Serious filmmakers. Yeah, because then you get into the like 10 millisecond range. And again, I'm probably the crazy person that cares way more about sensor readout than Ks of resolution. But I film enough fast moving stuff and action stuff and handheld work that you give me something in the like 18s or whatever the Pixel 6K is, and it's not horrible, but it's tough to use. Like you will see rolling shutter on that sensor compared to any of these other more modern sensors.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
So, you know, looking at, just looking at this right now, you know, the Red Komodo is the only one with the global shutter, but it's Super 35. So, you know, again, all of these, it's again, those, what do you care about? And because I still don't know, like I still, you know, open gate, I personally like the open gate, but again, that's a little bit more for what I need in terms of, I think it's going to be more valuable for social.
Yeah.
You know, but if you're doing the film, like the full filmmaker, like if you're just doing traditional Hollywood and independent filmmaking, like you don't need open gate particularly. Maybe if you're doing more anamorphic, so you can, you know, you'll have from a squeeze standpoint. But you know, 5K versus 7K versus, you know, 6K. Red Komodo's limited aspect ratios. Okay, fine. But what I find interesting is the color bit depth.
Yeah, we talked about this a couple of shows ago.
the more we talk about this, the more I go, 16-bit.
Yep.
16-bit versus 12-bit on all these other cameras versus, again, the Red going with 16-bit. Like,
yep.
And I think it's a big selling point. But again, where are you putting this and the type of stuff you're trying to make? I think for me, it makes more sense if you're wanting to make more quote unquote cinematic material. You know, the narrative, the stuff where you're like, the visuals matter. If you're making social content, because we were talking offline this week, and I'm threatening to get the R6V and the Canon R6V. But again, from a standpoint of it makes sense for social content.
Yeah.
From a filmmaking standpoint, it's pretty interesting. So IBS, 5-axis IBS, but these other ones don't have, they have digital, the Canons, but the Blackmagic and the Red don't. Focus. This might have the most advanced focus tracking, which Sony's always been pretty leading.
Sony's the GOAT. Sony's the GOAT at autofocus. You just won't get better than that.
And
fight me on that one.
And it just kind of and then built-in NDs. And so that's what this list kind of put together. Now, there's a lot of things I'm missing from this list, right? There's a lot of key points that I'm missing. All right, well,
just going to your color thing, we talked about it on a show before, but like just to dial into this more, the difference between 10-bit and 16-bit on your colors, 10-bit is 1.7 billion colors, which sounds like a lot until you step up to 16-bit, which is 281.5 trillion colors. So that's just where I'm like, if you want color fidelity, if you
100,000x,
yeah,
that's literally 100,000 times more.
Right. So if you want gradients, you want color fidelity, you want, color grading, just that level of raw output is hard to beat. You have so much color depth that you can play with in post. And that's why, to me, when I think like, what is that cinematic look that looks different than the DSLRs or the mirrorless cameras? And I really think it's motion cadence. So how the sensors are actually reading and storing that data that they're pulling out, and then color depth, because that's the only thing that we're, slowly evolving out of the 8-bit that was DSLRs in the first round of mirrorless. This is a huge difference, I think. So that was,
what do you feel
with the color
on this? Like that would be deciding factors between these cameras.
What are we missing on that list? Okay. So, you hit most of what I would look at. I'm trying to think of like
these
what
are kind of the top level things that you would care. I know something that you care about, which is, we've talked many times on the show, and we kind of mentioned a little earlier, which is sensor read.
Sensor readout. Yeah, that one you didn't have on the list, so that's a good thing to dig into. I would say as well, if you check this out, so this is where I started my digging. So News Shooter did a really, really good breakdown here if you want like all of the technical specs. But I had a complaint that I mentioned yesterday on the live stream, Jake, that I think we found some hint that this might actually be a problem that we could solve. So because I was looking for sensor readout, and we'll get into Gerald Undone too, because he did a great test on this. Here are some of the firsts that that the FX5 is. So it's the first with X-OCN. It's the first full frame with open gate. It's the first one with 3 base ISOs. And I like that. I don't know why I thought when I heard triple base ISO that they'd give us a higher one, because 12,800 is like plenty high enough. So I do like that triple base actually sat in the middle. The other thing Gerald Undone pointed out, which I don't know if you were kind of following this, but it's most likely or very similar to the A7R6 sensor that just came out, even though that's a crazy high resolution. But he pointed out that you take the resolution of that camera and you divide it by 2. So you basically just make every pixel twice as big. you get the exact resolution of this sensor. And it behaves very similarly to that new A7R6. So I thought that was really interesting. You've got this optional EVF. So here's where I'll give you, this was my complaint, I guess, that we have an optional EVF, which is amazing. We guessed that on our bingo card. And you have 32-bit float, but it only comes with their audio handle. But you have this one port, this like smart port. Let me see if they've got a photo of it here. I mean, when I'm telling you, they're breaking down data rates and everything.
Oh, wow.
You can kind of see it here. This like little square, this is, you pop that little thing off, and then that's where you bolt in. You can see the 2 quarter 20s here. So you bolt
not their hot shoe mount.
It's not in that hot shoe mount. It's this, it's a different mount right here. And you bolt the EVF or the audio handle into that receptacle. So the problem is you only have one of these, and their audio handle doesn't have another, like a throughput. So you have to pick and choose. Do you want an EVF or do you want the 32-bit float? But you don't get both. So one thing that I thought was interesting, News Shooter was kind of pointing out over here, is that, scrolling down. So here's somebody on our live stream yesterday said that it didn't look like it articulated because this was the first image that B&H put out. I can say B&H actually went in and put new photos out on their site today that show that it does articulate, because the photos that they put on there were like these 4. They missed this one, which is, I feel like, kind of important as if you want to show that this thing actually,
if you want to actually get it.
Yeah. Similar, they kind of compared it similarly to the way the Pocket 6K works, where you can attach it in and then it goes up and down and articulates. But this is what I saw from Mid 49. So they've announced a couple of different accessories, and look at what they kind of mentioned here, that you can buy this extension cable. And I don't know, this is all just kind of announced. We haven't seen any of this stuff yet, but it looks like they have a little throughput cable that you could plug both things into at the same time. I don't know how this is going to work.
But also, sorry, can we just acknowledge the graphic designer on this?
I love it.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I was going to say, don't hate on this, because I've just been hating on all the like ChatGPT horrible stuff.
I love the right. It's brilliant because it's a great mock-up, but then like to have the like electronic penmanship on it, just fabulous.
Yeah, they just wrote it out on their iPad. But I was so interested. So this might solve one of my main problems with, or just complaints, I guess. Not a problem, but just a complaint of you have to pick EVF or 32-bit float. If you could get a throughput cable or something like this that gives you both, what a phenomenal B camera to your Burano. Like, or your FX6, this becomes the A camera, because now look, this, you put that and this like Poco adapter, PL adapter, something up at the front that has NDs post the sensor but pre the lens. You're like, you kind of solved all the issues that we had that they didn't give us in this camera. Could be very cool. So that was the first thing that I was like, dang, this is really cool. And then I know we mentioned this on our live stream, but Gerald Undone, like anybody that's watching who saw this, like the purple video and was just like, oh, Gerald's back. Like, I know, Jake, you're probably not nerdy enough to watch this, but this is like, Gerald stuff is the most technical you can get on YouTube. He has like a xylograph that he does all of the what am I talking about? Dynamic range tests on. If you price that out, because I did, when he said I'm retiring, when I saw this video, I was like, Jesus, what do I need to buy to just do those tests for myself? I think that like xyloscope is like 12 grand or something like that. Like, this is not something that you're just going to pick up at the like local camera shop. It's a little hard to get to. So his video was terrific, and he covered the things that I care about, or that you're not going to get necessarily from many of the other reviews, which is like, technically, where does this camera break down in usable stops and data rates? So he broke down the rolling shutter, which I said was important to me. And I said, this thing has to, my thought was, this has to be under 10 milliseconds to be a modern cinema camera. If it doesn't have a global shutter, which I don't I'd like, but you're going to lose dynamic range. It's got to be a fast shutter. So he broke this down as if you're in 4K, 16 by 9, so you don't get the open gate, you get this down to 5.7 milliseconds, which is, I believe, 3 milliseconds faster than the FX3. That's
but which, again, if you're delivering for YouTube, if you're delivering for, you know, anything that, you know, your final output 16 by 9, and you don't need open gate.
Right.
Like, everything doesn't need open gate.
Exactly. So
that's where, like, this is unbelievable.
But if you're shooting sports or something like that, like what I think is so interesting in this camera, and a lot of other companies have been adopting this, is they kind of give you feature sets for what you need, and you can pick and choose what you use and what you don't use. So like they also gave us this dual gain mode, which the A7R6 introduced, which basically means it reads the sensor twice, one at a high gain and one at a low gain. So you get that. So Jake, when we were checking our box,
I'm a Canon guy. I have no idea what this dual gain stuff is. Explain it to me. And thank you.
So there you go. You basically read the sensor twice. You get all of the over highly exposed areas, and you get the low end exposure. So you can, and then you compute them together, so you get better dynamic range. The problem with that is you have to read the sensor twice. So it would make sense that your sensor readout goes up because you're reading this twice. So this is as slow as the camera is going to get. This is in full 5K in open gate with dual gain turned on, where you get the 16 stops of dynamic range and 18.4 milliseconds, which we can look up. Jake, I think that's similar to what the Pixis 6K does normally. So that's
fine. I'm not getting a Pixis 6K, which is not anyways.
But how cool is this? So if you are shooting sports or something fast moving or whip pans and you need that almost global shutter, you have that version. If you're outside shooting an interview or you don't have a lot of, you know, quick moving things that might have rolling shutter and you want more dynamic range, you can switch it into your dual gain modes. I think that's just a great option. And then if you don't want dual gain, but you want open gate, which to me, Jake, that sounds like you get 8.5 milliseconds, which is,
that's pretty fast.
Dude, that seems very usable in almost every situation. I don't think you're going to have a whole, unless you're like, the closest I could get is if you are shooting like professional golf commercials or baseball, something where you have a club moving at a very high rate of speed, you might get some bowing in that. But
at that point, like, you're most likely getting a camera that you're getting a very specific camera for that use case.
Right. I mean, that's one where if I'm like, I know I have this job, you go out and rent a Red or an Alexa that has a global shutter. And if you don't, this is your everything else shutter. So I thought that was really cool. And then the other thing that Gerald Undone is known for are these dynamic range tests. So this was his, and also I'm not going to steal all of his stuff. So go watch Gerald's stuff. Where like, I'm super happy that he put this video out. So I appreciate him. We're sharing some of his stuff, but go like his video because he did all the work for this. But this is the X-OCN. So in the RAW, 5K open gate at your first base ISO. It's giving you, I mean, it's giving 14 stops on the slope based. So this counts 14 stops of dynamic range here, which is killer. They said it's up to 16, and it does clean up a little bit if you go out of RAW. RAW is kind of like the noisier codec, basically. So what the slope-based DR dynamic range, what this is saying is at a half, which means your signal to noise ratio is half. So it doesn't count some of these lower ones. It doesn't count the super higher ones. Basically, once your signal to noise is so noisy that you can't read it anymore, gives you 11.5 stops of usable dynamic range in the RAW setting. And I think this goes up to like, 13 in their compressed versions, like not the RAW version codecs of this. Very usable. And then I thought, okay, what's the ZR? Because the ZR came out a little while earlier than this, and that had great dynamic range. So for comparison's sake, 14 stops of dynamic range, so the same, but at a 0.5 signal to noise, you've got 10.9 versus 11.5. So one thing that I thought was interesting is like, okay, the difference is only a stop and a half. So then here's another question, Jake. Do you need a stop and a half? This is 5,000. The ZR's half that. It's $2,000. It's less than half that.
You know, I look at it again, it depends on use case.
Yeah.
Like, okay, why are you going to need dynamic range? Well, if you're shooting in a wide variety of lighting conditions, right? I mean, I'm not a DP by trade. I'm a director. Yep. You're the DP. But like, I look at dynamic range. Okay, great. If we're shooting with super bright highlights in the sun, but also like, and then they're in the shade. And so we want to retain the our highlights, but also our deep shadows. You know, recently I've been doing a lot of outdoor shooting with clients, and I definitely feel it at times. And I go, oof, okay.
Right.
Either we're losing them in the shadows because we're gonna not get them in the direct sun, but we're blown out, or I'm either getting my shadows screwed or I'm getting my highlights screwed, and so. But if you're in a more controlled scenario, like a feature film, or with the budgets and a team, and you're not solo shooting, you might actually have a light to light something. Can you get away with 13 versus 14 stops of dynamic range? Is it really going to make that, that's not going to be the deal breaker between one thing or another, in my opinion.
And the other thing that I was thinking of, I saw a forum that was kind of dumping on the ZR for being overkill, which I can agree with. There's a lot of overkill in that camera. It's an interesting, and we can shift maybe in a minute to this conversation as well. But when that camera came out, we were in a very different storage space story than we are now. Everybody wants to retroactively be like, oh, storage is so expensive. When that camera came out, we did, you were buying 4 terabyte hard drives, SSDs, for $450. It was much cheaper to buy those storage cards. So, and the other thing though, was they were complaining about shooting in R3D, but not knowing how to color grade. So if you're the editor or the all-in-one filmmaker that's throwing a LUT on your, that's the first thing you're doing, is throwing a LUT onto your raw footage. And so you're smashing whatever you have down into 10, I think Rec 709 has 9 or 10 stops of dynamic range. So who cares? If that's what you're doing and you don't want to learn color grading, or you don't have a colorist, like you said, this is not a cinema package in terms of, people doing what jobs. I don't know if you're going to throw a LUT on this at first thing and call it done,
or that, or you just
it doesn't matter.
Rec 709 with a baked-in Rec 709 look, and not even color grade.
Yeah,
there's definitely social stuff I shoot for clients that I'm like, I don't have the time, money, patience, or energy, and you're not worth it it doesn't need to be color graded. This is going on TikTok, and it's going to be instantly forgot about. They're not going to go, ooh, well, wow, look at that. Very interesting color grade choice. That makes that, rather than okay, here's this film and we want to make it look a certain way. And
right.
What is the vibe and the energy, and how does the color change that all? And so, it's fascinating when you really start breaking down, what are the things that actually matter and what is the best for your workflow? And where are you trying to go? And that's what I thought was so cool about, to kind of take us back to the beginning of this, was who they decided to launch this camera with, and basically, be representative of the brand. And that they picked these great content creators I hate that term, but the content creators who are filmmakers, and who represent, who we as audience members go, oh, you're a filmmaker. You're not just a travel vlogger. You're not just a, YouTuber. you were truly a filmmaker, and we respect you as a filmmaker or as a filmmaker, like as a film gear reviewer.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a great job of really picking out those individuals. Because I look at this camera and I go, oh, if I didn't have, like, if I were focusing on just making films and not like the agency and like having built out already a whole Canon system, like this is an easy choice for me. Like I look at this as like, this has so much of what is needed. And or if you're in the Sony ecosystem already, like this, in my opinion, is an easy upgrade, or, you know, B cam if you're, you know, on the high end. But for all of us who have budgets and, you know, can't just spend money, this would be a logical upgrade at some point.
Well, the other thing that Sony did, which I did not expect, I mean, this was way off on my bingo card, was to price this under $5,000. And maybe I'm just like too jaded in covering all these camera like releases, but under 5,000 for Sony felt like they actually listened to the market. They actually looked at what was around them, and then they priced it higher than everybody else, but not exponentially higher, not painfully higher.
Yeah, but like, even, I mean, you know, again, it depends on what camera you're comparing it to. You know, we talked about, you know, the Canon C80, right? Which is what they're comparing it. It's cheaper than that. It's $600-700 cheaper than that. It's cheaper than the Red Komodo. And in a lot of respects, it's better than both of those. You know?
Is it? I will have to fact check you on that one. I thought the Komodo had come down in price. Okay, so you have to specify.
I did.
Because the Komodo's down at.
I said Komodo X, and that was on the chart that we made earlier.
Go check the tape, fam. I think you said Komodo because you made me think about it. Because I've looked at the Komodo versus the Komodo X as buying it as a cinema camera. The KX is $7,000. The Komodo, the original Komodo, without their like internal upgrades, which you get slow motion, you get the open gate, you get more stuff in the KX. That's down at like $3,500. So well, depending on what you want,
what I was talking about, and it's what I have it on my screen up here.
I couldn't read it, but I was believing in what you said. So the KX is more expensive.
Komodo X,
yeah,
you know, is $7,000.
Yeah,
but it's interesting.
So
like it is, everything's floating in that like 3,500 to 6,500 range, and so at, you know, just under, basically with tax and everything like that, just over 5K is, I mean, it feels fairly priced.
Yeah.
Like it feels like it's a good deal. You don't go, oh, like, you know, there's, you know, we were talking about lenses last week and we were like, well, this feels a little expensive for what you're getting. Like, it feels like it should be cheaper. Like this feels like, cool. If they made it, you know, it's 4,900. If they made it 5,200, we'd still go like, yeah, okay. Like, you know,
I like where they placed it. Life as Alan has said, we need to compare everything to the Luna Ultra or the Pocket 4P. So let's see here. Technically, with the Luna Ultra, you're getting 2 lenses for almost $5,000. With the FX5, you get no lenses. So this is basically a win for the Luna Ultra. I think that, you know, if you are a shooter that generally uses lenses with your cameras, that's a point for the Luna Ultra and the Pocket 4P. I would say also
we got to talk about stabilization.
That's what I was going to say. You have a built-in gimbal on both the Ultra and the Pocket 4P. There's IBIS. You have, I think, 6 stops or 5 stops of IBIS, which is great, but that's electronic. That's internal. It's not electronic, but it's internal stabilization. So you don't have the gimbal built in. That's another point.
Weight. I mean,
absolutely. I would say this
is so much heavier than either the Luna Ultra or the 4P.
I totally forgot. You have internal built-in storage in the Luna Ultra. Thank you.
Yeah.
Life is Alan. You pointed that one out too. I would argue as well, at least if we're comparing the FX5 to the Luna, you can remove the screen on the Luna Ultra and shoot with it. You can remove the screen on the FX5, but you only do that once.
And then it doesn't, but then also the screen doesn't, there's no,
you can remove the
FX5,
viewfinder though.
FX5 is an open gate.
Yes.
It is
Do you
open.
do you get open gate in the Luna? You guys, our Luna fan clubs,
you get
open
or
gate.
whatever it is.
I like that you got so animated, you got out of focus. You literally shook the camera's focus out. Yeah, so I think if you're, what we just did, that breakdown, I think Luna wins, right? 14 stops of dynamic range. If you use Gerald's test, then you're basically at 14 stops either way. Gerald Undone did not come out of retirement to actually test the dynamic range of the Luna Ultra though. So I'll just say, like, you got to trust us, bro, on that one. If we go 4P, then they're saying that's 17 stops. So how are you even going to fight with the 4P?
So,
except, wait, you can't buy that one.
So hot take, Luna Ultra and the DJI Pocket 4P, better cameras than the FX5?
I forgot. Wait, there's one more that I forgot.
Oh.
There's one more. Oh. You instantly can connect your microphone to the Luna Ultra. I didn't see in their launch video anything about wouldn't that be funny if Sony came out with their like little lapel microphone that said Sony on it and you could just wirelessly pair that? I would buy that. Honestly, I would buy that. And
another hot take, they're like a fifth of the price. You can get them for under $1,000. Yeah. Where it's basically $5,000 for the FX5.
You could buy a full 5 camera package.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could buy a full auto tracking. The FX5 has brand new AI autofocus, but it's not going to track you. If you put that thing on a tripod, it's just dead in the water. I mean, it's just pointing at whatever you pointed it at with no lens on it because you only bought the camera.
Yeah. So hot take.
All right, guys, we got you. Was that acceptable for our comparison to the Luna?
I think we can agree. Everyone here and watching this can agree that the Luna Ultra and the DJI 4P Pocket are better cameras than the Sony FX5.
Yeah. I'll let everybody go after Jake in the comments for that one, not me. Although I think Todd and Alan would both be fully championing you on your side there. I did think about this though. So I have at least jumping back into like your list of where these other cameras sit. And you did go C80 and the red Komodo, which are more expensive cameras.
Komodo X.
Komodo X. Thank you. Thank you for correcting me. See, look at how easy that is. What I will say though, in terms of expensive, because I thought of 2 reasons why Sony gets to be more expensive than any of these other ones in my head. One, first and foremost, is lens options. Come at me with another company that has as many first and third party lenses as the E-mount. Like we've talked about this, Jake, there are so many lenses that come out for E-mount that you don't have access to as a Canon shooter because they've withheld that mount. So to me, that is at least one part where you have more options on lenses that all work with Sony's autofocus, that all work with Sony's ecosystem. And I think, does it justify that the C50 is $3,500 and this is almost $5,000? Like that's a $1,500 delta. I don't know if you buy 5 or 6 lenses and you get a discount because they're cheaper.
But it's also not buying the lenses, it's renting it, Yeah. I wanted to shoot on some Cook lenses and I rented an FX3.
Yep.
Yes, Cook makes them RF also, but like it just wasn't interesting. Like if I was shooting at night, and so what am I going to do? I'm going to shoot on these Cook lenses, but on an FX3. Like,
yeah.
And so
You got better low light. So you were using it for the low light. Because I would say that's where my argument falls apart, though, is if you're going to go get cinema lenses, you're going to adapt this to a PL anyway, and you've got third-party adapters on any of these. If you get Cook PL, if you get Ingenue PL, if you get Zeiss PL, you can put it on anything. You can basically put it on anything.
Sure.
To me, I'm thinking like
it was like I didn't want a big, a big lens. I wanted the Cook, these Cook handheld, like they're small body lenses. I think they're like the CP3.
we talked about them.
Yeah. And so I got to play with them on, I made a couple short films with them, and I just shot it on, on the FX3, and, got to really just check it out, it was, yeah.
The other thing that I have noticed with Sony cameras, and I think as much as I was thinking this through as the other advantage, this camera will have to wait and see if all the firmware updates fix the little quirkiness of it. But we've talked about it on this show. I got the ZR. I'm a big fan of the ZR. I like shooting in that red codec. It is a quirky camera. Jake, we were talking on the phone offline, and I was like, I've got so many thoughts after shooting with this thing all day. It's just certain things don't work the way they should on the ZR. And so you're kind of always battling, like on the ZR. So I was shooting and testing out these manual lenses for a review that I want to do, these like very cheap cine lenses. If you have your color profile, your LUT, basically your display LUT on the ZR, you don't get focus peaking. They said they're going to fix that in some firmware, but they haven't. So you either get contrast or you get focus peaking, but you kind of need contrast to make sure you're in focus. The other thing that drove me nuts all day is punching in to check focus on a manual lens again. You punch in to check focus, make sure you're on. You can do that on the ZR. As soon as you hit record, it punches you out back to your normal frame. You cannot get back in. So on my Sonys, I'll like stay on 5X just to make sure that I'm locked in. And I can also have the preview LUT and have my focus peaking on. These are things that have still not, we're 305 days since they launched the ZR. Still hasn't come to the ZR. And you've got like apps that kind of piece this together, but you don't have a full working system. And so as much as I can say, like we can point to Canon cameras that are beasts that just work. There are Nikon cameras that just work. There are Lumix cameras that just work. But Sony has an ecosystem of all their menus work, all the features work. And so I think that's another reason why they get to be at that top dog price compared to the C50, compared to the ZR, because a lot of their stuff works. But this new launch is weird. They've got stuff they have to fix.
But I also think it's a bit of, it's brand equity. Like there is an aspect of brand equity. They are, in my opinion, leading the camera race right now. Like I think more cameras are on from a feature film and high-end television standpoint, from like the top of the game, more projects are being, I've seen the increase of projects on the Venices rather than the Alexas.
Yep.
Which was,
they've pushed a lot. I mean, I still see a ton of stuff shot on Alexa, but
there's a lot of stuff shot on Alexas. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I look at it from, it's interesting over the last 10 years, because I look at it from like Canon. I remember 10 years ago was like, yo, you got a Canon? Yo, like from that prosumer entry level to like mid-tier, like, they were the game. And then at the top tier, you had the RE Alexa space, right? Those were kind of like, if you were a top legit, you would shoot Alexa. If you were in, the DSLR space, you could say, was Canon. But then in the last 10 years, Sony has made a massive play for both markets in their Venices, beating out the Alexas, and in kind of that mid-tier market where they've just gone after Canon, they've gone after Panasonic, they've just taken the marketplace from a still standpoint, from a video standpoint, a mirrorless standpoint. And so I think they have a little bit of brand equity, which can come with a 10, 20, 30% upcharge because of it. The same way in the fashion industry, Gucci, Dior, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you can charge an extra $100, $1,000, whatever, because it has Hermes on it. You know?
Right. Well, I think you just nailed something that makes sense. And then Kenshin, you've got a great question, so I want to get to this. But I don't think Canon really has a Venice where this gets to be your B cam to the Venice, which is shooting multiple feature films, multiple like Sundance and Cannes winning films. You don't have that on Canon. You don't have that on Nikon, except you've got Red, which does shoot,
that's why Nikon made the play now
to
go, okay, how do we get back in the game? And they bought Red. And
but in terms of your brand equity, like this does get to be the stepping stone. So jumping into your question, Kenshin, is like, do you upgrade this? That's a great question, and that's tough. I think I would want more information from you. What do you shoot? Because the FX3 is still killer. But if I'm just looking at specs and overall use case, dude, if you could get $3,000 for your FX3, that's tough. But if you could get $3,000 for it, even $2,800, and spend $2,000 to get a 16-bit RAW, 5K open gate, like what Jake was talking about. Now you shoot social stuff, you shoot things that need to be in multiple formats. It's the first camera that you can actually you don't have to shoot way wide in a 16:9. If you shoot anamorphic stuff, 3x2 open gate is incredible. There's just so many benefits for an extra $2,000 if you can get that resale value.
But also depending on your use case, like the biggest thing is like, what are you using it for? What are you missing out? Like I know when I shoot on my stuff, I feel, because I shoot a lot of social content, I feel the lack of open gate. Like there's so many deliverables where it's like, hey, we need square, vertical, and horizontal. Fuck me. Like, okay, open gate handles that exact situation, right? Like even just this live stream, look at us going between square right now. We each individually are square. And then we go to the other, we're more horizontal, we're cropping for vertical. I mean, that's literally what we're dealing with right here on this live stream. But, are you going to color it? Like, if you're not going to color it, like do you need the 16-bit RAW? Like, if you're shooting TikToks with it, or just like, cool, I'm just going to throw on a Sony LUT or my LUT pack, that I got for $19.99 from XYZ creator that I like. Sorry.
Yeah.
The judgment. But, like if you're not going to actually sit in DaVinci Resolve and spend almost as much time editing as you do coloring, is that worth $2,000 of your money?
Yeah.
But hey, on the flip side, it's like, I love coloring. I want to make this the most gangster images. Like if you're like a DP, 100% swipe the fucking credit card. Yep. That's my hot take.
I like it. And Kenshin, thanks for the background on this. So doesn't currently have a mirrorless, which is nice. So now you said you're in a fortunate position, man. You are in a great position because now you get either a much cheaper FX3 because people are trying to sell them to get the FX5, or you can go get the FX5, which is a steal. I don't know. There are other competitors, but it's a great camera. And this is one thing, if you are shooting a lot, this is the one thing I felt from just doing a personal shoot day with the ZR. And full admittance, I'm not professional. I don't feel proficient or professional with the ZR yet. I'm not fast at it. Like we talked about this a couple of shows ago, Jake, right? It's like you lose money on fiddling with menus and looking unprofessional. You will lose clients, you'll lose time, you'll lose money if you don't know your camera well enough to execute. I don't feel proficient at the ZR. I think you can get to proficiency at the ZR. I've seen a lot of really incredible projects shot on it. But I love my FX3. I'm fast at it. The menus the big 6 menus are incredible. You can operate things quickly. It feels like a Burano or a Venice in terms of just like you get stuff. It's set up quickly. It's mountable. The fan means it never overheats. Like there are just certain things about those cameras that just freaking work, where the feature packed ones, you know, the ZR on paper, it's such a conundrum, Jake, in my head, because I love specs enough to be like, on paper, the ZR wins in every category. 5K, this has 6K. Internal RAW doesn't have internal RAW. I mean, not this FX5, but just anything else now on the menu.
Yeah.
The ZR wins on almost everything, but the FX3 is easier to shoot on. So I would grab that before the ZR right now. So
and that right there, like that's, in my opinion, is always the biggest thing. It's like, what are you the most comfortable with? And I know for me, being a Canon shooter, anytime I rent, or you know, whether I'm renting it for a project because on an FX3 or whatnot, anytime I go to Sony or a client's like, hey, yeah, we're going to shoot Sony on this. I'm like, why? It's like, because we want to. And I'm go, all right, you're paying the bills. Fine. There's a little bit of like, it's because I'm just not quick with it. And I remember the first time I shot on a Sony, and it was the same thing first time I shot on an Alexa. I was like, and the first time I shot on a Red. Literally every camera besides the camera that I used to.
Yeah. Anytime you jump to a new system, you're going to be...
I had settings incorrect. The footage didn't look good. There was learning curves. And so, yes, going from an FX3 to an FX5, you're going to have little to no learning curve. But, you know, so I think it's really like looking at like, what are you, not that, you know, this is a teaching moment for anybody, but for Kenshin, it's like looking at like, what are you lacking in what you're shooting? You know, if you follow us or go into any past episodes of this show, I'm constantly kvetching. It's a Yiddish word for complaining. You know, I'm constantly complaining about different things in my cameras that I'm like, if it just had this, if it just had this, if it just had that. And then a new camera will come out and be like, oh, well, this could solve it. And then my rule of thumb is rent it. Rent before you buy it. Spend the 100, 200, whatever, couple $100 to use it for the weekend. The great thing is if you rent on a Friday, you can return Monday, typically for a 1-day cost. So it kind of gives you a 3-day-ish period. And if you just block it out, then you can really see what you like and don't like about it. And, you know, so, which I'm sure a lot of camera houses will have this real quick.
Yeah, once we get it, it'll probably be sold out for a while though, too, because of that. But it's good advice if you're not dire for anything right now, then let it come out. Let's see where the firmware is. Like that's another strategy as well. I'm also a huge advocate of, like you said, Jake, rent it, but also whatever you can find in this zone, the FX3, like graduate into the next thing. Especially what I've seen in the Sony cameras is they will hold their value. Like they don't go down in value very often. So even if you buy a used FX3, you can use it, grow your portfolio, grow your client list for a year, sell it for, you know, even if you sell it $1,000 less than you bought it, that's a cheap rental for a year. And usually these things have held their value in a pretty substantial way. So I don't see the problem of growing into your work.
Yeah. So asking about where do you rent cameras?
Yeah, Jake is freaking spoiled and we'll do this regularly. And I know this because I took it for granted when I lived in LA for 15 years, is you just go down the street and you've got any rental house there.
Okay.
Jake, well, for the rest of us, it's a little harder.
Yes and no. There's several options. So you can, this is going to be the stupidest response, but Google, just Google rent this camera. So that's going to be stupid answer. Now, your legit answers are this. There's obviously professional rental houses. Kenji, I don't know where you live, but in a lot of the major cities, there are legit rental houses that have a massive stock of stuff. Additionally, there has been a massive surge of basically digital rental shops. So where shops that are located around the country own a large inventory of gear and are professional rental houses, and then they will ship it to you. They make it super easy. They give you a return label address. Like you go to FedEx or UPS, they usually have a corporate account, and then they ship it to you. You just go back to FedEx, you give them the label and go, great, it's done. Very easy. The third option, which is typically the most affordable, but it varies depending on where you live, this is where Colden goes, why did I move out of LA? Is you have this is again not sponsored. You have a website called ShareGrid, which is essentially the Airbnb for gear. And so if you're not shooting every day and you're okay with others renting, using just other gear, you go, Colden has his Nikon ZR. He can put it up on there. I have my Blackmagics and my Canons. I can put it up there and rent it. And so you just rent it from guys like us. And usually you get a very competitive pricing there. Unless it's a highly sought after piece of gear, then it can get very expensive. Or
Jake, I don't think you know this, but anybody else that's here in the comments, you can back me up. I believe you take this for granted. ShareGrid, not in LA and New York, and maybe Chicago and Dallas, is like trying to get an Uber if you walk 200 miles out into the country with no lights to be seen. And you're like, dude, just get an Uber. Just log on to Uber and just get an Uber back home.
Hey,
they don't exist. I've checked. So you guys back me up here if you've tried to get on ShareGrid, because it's great if you're shooting in Dallas, New York, LA, Miami, Chicago,
San Francisco,
Frisco. Like if you're not there, ShareGrid does not exist. But lensrentals.com would be one that I would say go to, because they rent lenses, they rent bodies too. I've used them.
Lens Depot is another one. That's why I say, like, if you Google it, you'll find a lot of the online ones. I use them. I enjoy using it, especially when on shoots that I want a specific camera and or lens and I'm traveling. So I don't have to rent it in LA, lose the money on the travel days and paying for the rental of travel days. Earlier this year, I was in New York and I wanted to use one of the higher end Fuji cameras and for a photo shoot. And so I just had it shipped to New York. I picked it up the morning after I landed, dropped it off, a couple hours before my flight, and it was great. So if instead of paying for 7 days worth of rentals, I paid for 4 days worth of rentals. Very, very easy. And just, so I look at, that's my cheat code.
The other, I will add to that and button it, because you mentioned it. The other thing you can do is, if you don't have a local camera shop near you, there are local camera shops in markets though. Cause I don't know where you are, but there are local markets that are bigger. For me in Florida, like I might not be close to one, but they have Orlando or Miami or Jacksonville. Like you can, if you're willing to drive a little bit, you can pick up from local and drop off from local. There's that option as well.
100%.
It's not easy, but there are pretty much everywhere you can find a local market within 2 hours of you that you can get to. That's the other thing, is if you wanted to rent local and return local, that's
especially now that camera gear is more than ever being used, because of all of the content creation of social media, YouTube, etc. Like content gear is much more readily available than it ever has been.
Jake, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take this one too. So how does it handle damages? Well, I have insurance. So, but it's also, so like ShareGrid, for example, you can get third-party insurance, or you pay a little extra on your rental for it. Otherwise, like the online ones, they just is part of the fee. It's like, great, we put in like, they don't even tell you. It's like, great, it is covered. And because of it is the rental is, $80 a day, $200 a day, whatever. And it's like, great. They just kind of bake it in as part of their rental cost. If it's a local shop, usually they'll require insurance, or they might have a extra insurance, or you can just get gear insurance. But I pay, I don't know, $600 a year. So, whatever that is. And it insures, tens of thousands worth of gear. And so it not only insures my own gear, but any gear that I rent.
It's just like renting a car.
Yeah.
I've always looked at it. You either opt out and either inherit the liability, or you have your own insurance. And a lot of times, like you said, they'll cover it. They will have an insurance provider for you if you don't have gear insurance. But Jake, you threw in a little nugget of wisdom here. Have insurance on your gear. That's the dumbest thing, but it will cover you if you need it.
My rule, unfortunately, has become get the insurance so you never need it. And because the one time you don't pay for insurance is the one time you need it. And I have found personally that when you pay for it and like because you're paying for it, you never need it. And it's like, oh, well, why am I paying for this insurance? Because I constantly, looking at the statements and I go, well, so we really need to pay for insurance again? And it's like, well, yeah, because we haven't had any accidents. So we're going to continue to pay for insurance.
Yeah. Yep.
And so just make sure it cover, like, you don't need to get $1 million policy. Cover to the limit of the gear that you own and that you would rent. And so great. If you're only going to rent 20,000, if you only own $10,000, $20,000 worth of gear, and you're not going to rent $50,000 worth of gear, $100,000 worth of gear, don't get a $50,000 or $100,000 policy. That's also my little cheat code to pay less insurance.
Great advice. I'm going to end our show with a rant, and you're welcome to jump in on this with me, or hold me back against the ropes, Jake.
Next
week, though,
I don't even know what we're talking about. So
it's going to stay with the FX. It's going to stay with the FX5 launch, but I'm just going to point something out to everybody watching. Next week, though, I do want to get into this iPhone short film that I saw. So we'll get into that next week because I want your thoughts. I want to set enough time aside to get to that. So we literally went, here's a very expensive camera today. We've spent an hour talking about this $5,000 cinema camera.
To be honest, look, this has been the camera that is arguably the most worth its hype.
I agree with you.
This is probably one of the more exciting cameras to actually discuss. Sure, you have the Luna Ultra and the DJI 4P, but
sure,
from an actual professional camera, I think it's worth the episode.
So I think Todd and Alan and anybody else that is shooting stuff on your pocket cameras, this short film that I want to talk about next week was shot entirely on the iPhone 17. And so, Jake, we'll break that down. But it literally shows, like, if you've got a great story and you can light it to the camera that you have and the pros, the cons, the limitations, you can tell a really phenomenal story. And you don't need a $5,000, $10,000 camera. So we'll get to that next week. Here's the last bit that, Jake, you should appreciate, or you would know from me, that I enjoyed about this launch. Let me just break down the timeline. We had rumors and more crystallized rumors. And then we had a launch day that was said, okay, Sony's going to launch it on this day. And then a couple days later, in fact, we didn't even schedule our live stream because Sony hadn't announced it yet. But then around Monday, I think, Sony announced we're going to have this big event on July 22nd. So we scheduled our live stream. On July 22nd, Jake, at 10 a.m., what happened? They went live. They had their event. Everything went as scheduled. When the camera was announced, what happened? All the creators' embargoes were lifted, and we were able to see footage from all these. And they put cameras in great hands, but they also allowed creators to say, This is what's good with it. This is what's bad with it. This is still buggy because I had beta firmware. You know what I didn't see one of on July 23rd, Jake, was a picture of somebody holding the FX5 saying, I can't wait to tell you about this great camera, but you got to stay tuned for later. But here's a picture of me holding it instead. This is a return. So when I was freaking out in April about GoPro doing this ridiculous launch of we're going to take pre-orders, but you can't see any footage and you can't see the camera, and we're going to have millions of creators just blast our social media with pictures of a GoPro, but no footage because it's not ready yet. This is a launch that is normal. And I'm so grateful for that. So if anything else, the rumors were pretty much true. The announcement happened. And here's the other thing. What happened to DJI? Remember when we were going to cover the DJI 4P that was launching at Cannes? They went on their social media. They said, we're launching at noon in Cannes, the Pocket 4P. What happened? Nothing.
There wasn't a launch.
No
There
launch.
was no launch.
No launch.
Yeah.
So to everybody that commented at me that was like, dude, this is so normal. Embargoes are normal. Every camera's embargoed. This is the normal launch that I'm used to.
Yeah.
That there is a release date, that the camera makes their announcement, and then creators, filmmakers, YouTubers, people with Instagram accounts can make whatever comments, judgments about the camera that they want. That feels like a normal launch, and I'm grateful for a little return to normalcy after what feels like a summer of like botched announcements and overhyping things that didn't exist yet.
100%. Let me ask you this about the actual Sony launch. So
Sure.
they had I thought the video presentation was fantastic. But
I
then
agree.
No keynote, no speaker, no anything about that. But on their I forget, it was the Lens, they had a keynote on it. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm fine, Todd. Todd, I'm fine. I'm working through it. Okay.
He has a podcast, Todd. That's why.
Yeah. This is therapy.
We're
This is
men.
therapy.
We have podcasts. We don't go to therapy.
Yo, Burlap and Light. Glad to see you're here. So what was your question? I was
Keynote
busy
versus
thinking
video
about going to
presentation.
therapy about this.
Keynote versus just video presentation.
So they did a full 40-minute keynote on the A7R6.
Exactly.
Which is great. And I liked it. But I think for this one, here's my thought. And honestly, we weren't doing this with the FX3 when they launched that in 2020. Like, we didn't have this. So I don't remember that launch. You can go back and look it up, I suppose. But they put this camera in so many good creators' hands that I also, and this is where my criticism of GoPro started on that episode, was if you believe in your product and you believe that you just made the best action camera ever, which I believe they did. The Mission one looks phenomenal. Trust your creators to talk about it and allow the shortcomings to fuel the next firmware update, comments, talks about it. You build trust with your community that way. So that's my thought here, is maybe they opted for, here's our beautiful images. You're going to watch this, and then we know you're going to go watch your favorite filmmaker or YouTuber or whatever. And you'll get information there. They gave all of those guys the talking points, the spec sheets, but everybody had their own little spin on it. They had their own criticisms. I mean, I'm a huge fan. If you guys didn't see it at the top of the show, I said, go watch Cam Mackey. He was brutal on that camera. He said, these are all the things that aren't working yet. And that didn't make me not want to buy the camera. It made me think about, like, okay, what's the product pipeline? We talked about firmware. Is it worth buying a camera that isn't done yet? But that level of honesty, if anything, makes me trust. At least now I know what the shortcomings are. I'm not putting my money down and then going, what the hell? This isn't even done yet. Like, I appreciate that way more.
It makes me trust the company more. It makes me trust Sony as a company going, oh, they're letting people say the good and the bad rather than, hey, yeah, look, this camera's great. It can do this, this, and this, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Right. Not even that. Here's a picture of the camera. It's going to be great. Like, you didn't even get to do that.
Or even just, yeah, I mean, that's the worst case scenario. But, you know, this is not a GoPro show. Again.
Every couple of episodes, we got to tie it back. I just thought I wrote that note down because, and it wasn't only GoPro. GoPro started this trend of the pocket-y cameras. Now, granted, they're in a very different class. And Todd has pointed out too, DJI has jumped to be one of the most highly sold cameras in Japan in Nikon, Canon, Sony's backyard. So DJI is doing great there, but they're in a totally different market. I get that. But at the same time, if you say you're going to launch a product on this day at this time,
it should be done.
Like, make sure your marketing team doesn't put that post out until you're ready to go. Or if you're not even close to being there yet. And this is like extra muse right now is driving me nuts just because you have a great camera, but you still don't have a date. You still have issues. Like, they have a lot of issues right now that they're fighting. But
again, going back to the video game, what's GTA? You know, GTA is the notorious one for it. But again, they're kind of doing it correctly, which is like, hey, it's not ready yet, guys. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
You know, nope, sorry, not ready yet. And they're wanting to make it right.
Yeah.
And they do launch rather than like, well, that's okay. Oh, you know. So, you know, I 100% agree. Like, it's the return of actually a correctly launched product for the first time.
Wait, is that what we're calling
comments?
Issues? What issues of what? We've complained about so many issues. So Burlap, you got to tell me here, what issues with who? GTA 6, my issues that are personally built up that Todd has told me I need to work on.
Clearly, Colden needs to do more episodes of this podcast to work through his therapy.
Yeah. In my defense, though, in my original hatred of GoPro's launch, I would not say hatred of GoPro because I really do love the company. What did we talk about then? What are we talking about now? It doesn't make you trust the company. Yeah. I would have been a pre-order customer of the Mission 1. It's a great spec camera. It looks beautiful. If you would have let me see that at the beginning of the launch, great. And I also don't ever have a problem with rumors. We've covered Andre Pizzini's rumors from the FX5 for the last month because we were both excited about it. Those are rumors. That wasn't Sony saying, we'll take your money today.
Yeah.
And we won't show you anything until maybe a month from now. So those are my things. It's very nice to see that. And I think all three, Sony, Nikon, Canon, when they say they're going to launch something, again, they're in that little bit of a different class, but when they say they're going to launch something, they launch it and they allow their creators, whoever they've decided to work with on this launch, they let those people say pros, cons, what's working, what's not, what's beta firmware, what's not. I appreciate that. There's like that level of transparency is important. And extra, yes, I am currently working on a video for that, and I will put it up on this channel hopefully before the weekend. But yes, we will call extras issues currently issues that they are struggling with. Jake, do you know anything that we're talking about right now?
No, but I'm excited to hear about your therapy session next week.
Okay, yeah. We will save that for next week. We will talk about our issues. Check my channel for this weekend for that update because there's some issues.
And check out my channel just because, guys.
Just because, yeah, because Jake's been doing a killer job of clipping this stuff. So if you ever want there are no better words for it. I agree with you, man. It's very little confirmed or denied at this moment. So that's what our lawyers told us to say, that they just have certain issues. All right.
All right, guys.
My friends, thanks for hanging out. Jake, thanks as always, man.
It's a double episode week. Double episode week of the Creative Lens.
Yeah.
So we appreciate any and all of you guys that have A, stuck around for this entire episode, but B, was with us for the launch yesterday.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
double episodes, let us know, because maybe we're just it's a Monday Thursday show. Maybe
Jake
not.
has been pushing this since we launched. We need more
because you
work,
and I
man.
just talk all day, and so we do this. It's just Colden and I having therapy all the time, and I was like, why don't we just do this on camera
Forever.
and just make fools of
That's great.
ourselves and try to get us canceled within the creative community.
Always fun. Challenge accepted, man. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be back next Thursday. I don't know what day that is, but that will be episode 17 for
August.
So
August.
No way.
No. I think it's the last.
Not yet. 30th.
July.
The 30th. We will be
30th.
here at 2:30 on Thursday.
Whoa,
Colden.
11:30.
11:30
Pacific,
Yeah,
2:30 Eastern. Okay, this sign off sucks.
I know. I'm Colden. That's Jake.
I'm Jake.
This is the Creative Lens. See you next week, guys.